Temple Israel, Rabbi Waxman filled out a paper. I don't know if I signed the ketubah or not. It was just on a paper. Second marriage, after Gary had passed away, we were at the Jewish Museum touring. We went into the bookshop and we found a very beautiful ketubah. I remember it being blue and yellow. And we had all the guests. We each invited 5 couples and then family. I had a very small family. Leslie had a very big family. And everybody watched the signing. The signing of the ketubah had to be done by 2 Shomer Shabbos men, very Shomer Shabbos. And they were friends of ours, and they were honored to have signed for us. And later on, years later, we were getting divorced, and we had lawyers working on the divorce here in Nassau County, and it would go to the Nassau County Court. But we needed to get a rabbinical assembly. We had to go to the Bet Din, which was the highest level of Orthodox Judaism. It was in the city across from FIT. And we sat for an hour or so filling out papers about our background, the Hebrew names of our parents, Hebrew name of past marriages, my spouse, Leslie's spouse who had passed away, and our Hebrew names, the current Hebrew names. And so when it was time for the rabbis who had been sitting there, 3 rabbis, very Orthodox rabbis, to give us a script. My script said wife, and Leslie's script said husband. And so I would read my part. I am doing this. Nobody has pushed me into it. It was my belief. This is what I want. And he said some similar things. And then the rabbi turned to me and he said, wife, Mrs. Wachter, you were married to a Kohen in your first marriage. And now you were married to a Kohen in your second marriage. You have used up all the Kohanim that you're allowed. If you get married again, you cannot marry a Kohen. And my thought was, I'll never marry again. But, and if I did, let's say I got married in Pittsburgh, I don't think they would trace to see how many Kohanim I had been married to. But the Kohanim are descended from the high priest, and they certainly let every day, they made me aware of it. They made my children aware of it, Gary especially. But because I have arthritis, I was able to do the Kohanim, let's see, yeah. This is the sign that the Kohanim do. 2 fingers to the left, 2 fingers to the right. The arthritis started early, so I thought, well, maybe I was descended from a Kohen. My father was a Levi. But it brought a lot of humor to both of us. And I was telling Nancy the other day, and she said, Mom, you made that up. I said, no, this is real. So that's my story. Oh, but the thing was, we had to bring the ketubah to the rabbis. They took it away, so I never saw it again. I do not believe that I signed it. I believe that the men signed it, and I did not. So that's my story.
Thank you, Irene. I'm sorry we missed it last time, but it's a wonderful opening to our...
Thank you for letting me share.
So let's see. We can't start. We're 3 minutes ahead, so that's why. And I wanted to welcome Marsha, who's going to. And Iris is here. Good. I don't know why. And if anybody came in after the beginning, I don't know if you remember last time. We weren't able to hear Irene, but now she is here, and she couldn't tell us her story, which she thought we would enjoy, and I certainly did. So if anybody, Iris, did you hear any of her story?
No, I didn't. I just tuned in.
Okay, no,
I didn't realize you were starting earlier. I could
no,
have.
no, 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 no. We just had time, and since it really wasn't part of the, and we had a lot to do today. No, so Irene is going to give you the punchline.
Rhoda, can you hear me?
Yes, 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 dear.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Who's Kat?
All right. Well, or let me, because Irene tells such a beautiful story. You'll have to get it from her, but I fear that I'll spoil it by giving you the punchline. So I suggest speak to Irene about her second ketubah, her second marriage, and her second ketubah. I've never heard anything quite like that. Laura, did you want to say something?
I was just wondering, Irene, did you get a get? You said you may not have gotten the
Oh,
ketubah.
did we
Yes.
indeed?
Yeah.
He wrote it with a pen, a special pen, and he was writing this way, not straight, the way we would think of going from right to left, but across. That was sealed and put someplace in the Rabbinical Assembly. We then, by mail, received the get both in Hebrew and in English.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
So
Okay.
you're ready for breaking the law. She's going to have to leave town. That's another Kohen. Okay. So no, Iris, really, the story is worth retelling, and she's going to tell you.
Okay.
Did you hear it, Marsha? I don't know whether you got it.
I heard the last part of it.
All right, well, you got the best. She told a lovely story, as we're going to hear.
I heard about the two Kohens.
Yes, yes.
Yes. So that's not a spoiler, Iris. You're going to like the whole story, right?
Yes.
You
Well,
promise,
yes.
Iris?
Okay.
Okay. So, Laura, are we?
Okay.
Marina,
Marina,
are we going to wait for her, or?
I didn't speak to her this morning. This is her lunch hour, so she'll join us as soon as she begins that. So maybe Marcia should begin first.
Okay, that's what I want to ask you.
Or I can quickly.
Marina is here.
Oh, Marina's here? Hey, Marina.
I see her.
Oh, there you are. Oh, hi, hon. Hi, good morning. How are you?
Only a mother could tell, yes. Or grandmothers, they don't have.
Her.
Okay. Are you ready?
Can we give, Marsha, would you mind? She's working, so this will be her only time. Can you wait for Marina?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Marina, where are you, dear? You're here.
Like
Carol?
physically?
No. No, I just wanted Carol to find you. There. All right.
Yeah.
Marina, Carol, do you see Marina?
Raise your hand, Marina.
No, I don't see.
I do. Actually, I even sent her a message. I've already sent her a message.
I'm
Marina,
sorry.
you are now co-host.
It's just a
Let's
highlight.
see.
Did anybody understand her?
Marina, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay, great.
I can hear.
I can hear.
Okay, so Marina, you are now co-host.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
All right, thank you. So could we give, you don't need me because, so the first time in whatever 6 weeks, I came without a single piece of paper. So although at the end, I'd like to bend your ear a little, but could we start, thank you. And can we start? Marina has a story. This is the theme for this week is genealogy and histories. So take it away. As a matter of fact, Laura, do you want an introduction, dear?
I hereby present my wonderful granddaughter, Marina, who's a product of Great Neck Schools, Temple, Israel. Her parents were married at Temple, Israel, and I'm going to leave it to her to tell you the rest of the story. Okay? And it's great to see you, Marina. Thanks for joining us.
No problem. Okay, hi everyone.
Hi.
So today I was going to present a project that I worked on talking about my family history, not going too far back. And so I'm going to share my screen so you can get to see some of the pictures, and I'll explain the process and you'll get to see the project. So let me just share screen with you. Okay. Okay, does everyone see the first image on the screen?
Yes, yes.
Okay, perfect.
Oh,
Okay, so this project was called Memories of Migration, and it was a project hosted by the Queens Public Library and Queens College, which is where I went to school, as well as Queens Memory Project, which is an oral history archive that records the history of ordinary people in the Queens Borough, and through oral history interviews, through pictures and such. And Queens Memory Project is located both at Queens Public Library and Queens College. And so in the fall of 2017, all of these groups came together to create this project called Memories of Migration. It was open to the public of Queens. I saw it because it was advertised at Queens College. And so what it was a small group of people, and here you can see pretty much almost all of the participants. I think one participant is missing from this image. So it was a small group. And what we did was we interviewed each other talking about our stories of migration. I was the only person in this group that wasn't specifically myself a migrant. So I talked about my father's story. If you don't know, my dad, Jose, is an immigrant from Spain. And then everyone else was talking about their own experiences, either from China, Colombia, and Haiti. And so first what we did was we interviewed each other. We learned about oral history interviewing techniques. I was paired with Charlene, who is the woman in this image all the way to the left. She's an immigrant from China. And after we did this interviewing process, we started to think about how we wanted to turn our stories into a visual representation. Memories of Migration was a story quilting project. So we were all thinking in line with story quilts. And so I started my project. Now, to give you a little bit about my personality, I'm a big planner, so I already kind of came into the program knowing what I wanted to do. And so my quilt was pretty big, and you'll see the final product. And there's 4 different squares that tell my family story. Now, it didn't need to be a legitimate quilt, but I also put batting in there because I wanted it to look fluffy like a quilt. So this is me working at Fresh Meadows Library. They had sewing machines. They had an instructor to teach us how to use the sewing machines. And this is me again working some more. And here is my final product. Now, these quilts are not just what they seem when you look at them. So visually, this shows my father's immigration story. From the top left is a representation of where he's from, the beaches of the Mediterranean in Spain. There's even a small picture on the square of his grandfather cooking fish on the beach. The top right square represents the correspondence and relationship between my parents. So my mom, Laura's daughter, went to Spain to study abroad and met my dad, and then they corresponded for 2 years, represented by the envelope here. And I even have some pictures of my parents when they were in Spain. My mom lived in Spain for 2 years after graduating college. So that's what that represents. The bottom left corner represents my father making his family here in the United States. So that's kind of a representation of my family home in Great Neck. And there's even a picture of the 5 of us, my siblings and my parents, in the window. And then in the bottom right-hand corner is more of like a representation of how I embody my father's story. I have 2 cats, so I just had to kind of put my cats there, but it's more of a representation of how the story continues. You might notice in the center of the quilt that there are these 4 buttons. So this was not just a quilt that you get to see, but it's also a quilt that you get to hear. At the back of the quilt, there is a kind of circuit board, and this circuit board is connected to these 4 buttons, and there's speakers behind the quilt as well. I connected the buttons to the circuit board and to the speakers with electric thread. Unfortunately, I don't have a picture of what the back looks like. It's not very pretty.
Marina.
When you, yeah,
Granddaughter, Marie.
excuse me.
Yeah, but you're watching quilt. So.
We have a lot of people whose microphones are on.
Please don't.
Oh, okay. So what happens is when you press one of these buttons corresponding with the different squares, you get to hear an oral history clip from the interview that I did with my fellow group members, and you get to hear the story of when my father was growing up in Spain, when my parents met each other, and so forth. You're able to attach a headset, and you can listen with a headset. So the picture that you're looking at right here is of our kind of unveiling of the project at the Fresh Meadows Library in Queens. So my grandma also came. There was a potluck and everyone celebrated. And it was first kind of shown at the Fresh Meadows Library as a small exhibit with the other quilts that were produced in this project. So that's kind of fall, kind of Thanksgiving time of 2017. But this was not the only project that I participated in when it came to story quilts. So after this was kind of a guinea pig project. We were the first people to try it. Queen's Memory hosted another program called Common Threads. And so this is the second quilt that I participated in. Common Threads, instead of people making their own quilts, we all learn different quilting techniques and sewing techniques from different cultures and from different community members. And we put all of the the squares together into this one large quilt. And then some people in the group did oral history interviews about their family's personal connection to sewing. And similarly, through that circuit board and electric thread, you'd be able to pick up a headset and press a button and listen to those stories. This is a picture that was taken at the Queen's Museum. So last summer, so that was 2019, both this quilt that you're seeing right here and all the small quilts, including my own, were on view at the Queen's Museum for people to look at, for people to touch, and to listen to. Now, my squares on this big quilt are the ones that are pointed to with arrows. One has like a little boat and a sun, kind of representing, again, my father's story. And then the other square is a log cabin quilt pattern. It doesn't have any specific representation, but that quilt workshop was taught by an African-American woman talking about the history of the Underground Railroad and her experience in Queens in the Black community here. One workshop I wasn't able to take part in, which is really unfortunate because I think they're the most beautiful squares on the quilt, are these reverse applique squares. I don't know the terminology, but it was an instructor from Panama talking about her experience and her technique. So instead of adding things on top of the quilt square, you cut away and see the different layers underneath. So those are my images and my story. But if anyone has questions, I could answer them or talk about it further.
Can we say kudos?
Thank you.
They were terrific. Terrific. So, do you know, is it an ongoing, have additional people come forward and did individual, since you were the guinea pig, you said group, did additional,
No.
It did, yes.
So since the common thread quilt, so this happened, so the first quilt was in the fall of 2017. Then in the summer of 2018 is when we worked on the Common Threads quilt, and then it was on view at the museum in 2019. So since then, there hasn't been a new quilting project, but there have been other initiatives that Queen's Memory has worked on. As part of this exhibit at the museum, there was also I don't know what the title of it was, but it was a community embroidered map. I don't have a picture of it here, but it was a piece of fabric on which was printed an old map of Queens, like a really old map. And visitors to the museum were encouraged to find an important part on the map that they connect to in the borough of Queens, make a little bit of an embroidery on it, and then record what embroidery stitches they used, what location on the map it was, their name, and the story behind the location. And so that was something that was also part of this initiative. And also during this time was the creation of a card game called Memory Kaleidoscope. I actually have my version downstairs. It's kind of like, it's not a game, it's more of a social activity where people start to think about memories and are prompted by images and artwork. And it's to promote active listening and connection and understanding. But there has not been another community quilt, and I look forward to possibly being another community quilt. And most recently, during the COVID pandemic, Queen's Memory has created a program, and it's an ongoing program for people to record their experiences in the Queens Borough. So in April, I hosted my family's virtual Passover Seder, and I submitted my 3-hour recording to their archive. And there's plenty of other types of recordings and images and videos that people have submitted during the pandemic to the group.
Great.
Does anybody else? I don't know if.
Oh.
Yeah, okay. Carol, you see Irene?
Okay.
Or anybody else out there?
There is someone who has a question, Jennifer Grant, but you're muted.
Jennifer, we can't. Irene, you're back off.
That was fantastic. It's Brenda, fantastic.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I'm just locating the picture of that embroidery project you were mentioning. I'll hold it up. I had it and it went off my phone again. So,
if you want, you could send it to me and I can screen share.
well, here it is. Here's the part that I put in. This represents Manny's apartment, where Manny and I first lived, our first years that we were married in Queens. We lived on the Horace Harding Expressway as it was being constructed. Really, we were on the side street of it, and 228th Street in Bayside. So I put a heart over where the house was that we lived in there. So that's a small picture of the thing. It was huge. This is a description. This is the card that I filled out to go with it, with the address and with what stitch. I can't even read what stitch it was that I used. It's too tiny. And this, here we are working on the project. Okay.
Wow.
It is huge. It was a huge table. And the aim was to eventually have it all filled in. Oh, this shows listening to the electronic discs that Marina mentioned that were embedded in her quilt.
Mention the colors.
Oh, yeah. Marina, you didn't mention the significance of the colors.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So let me bring it back up then.
Yeah.
It went away from it.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
So the red and the yellow are representative of the color of the Spanish flag. Let me bring it back here. So the red and the yellow are representative of the Spanish flag, as you can also see in the top right square. but I also wanted to represent a little bit of the imagery of where my dad grew up. So he's from the south of Spain in a region called Andalusia, which, if you know of Granada, Seville, these are areas that were like the last stronghold of the Muslim rulership as well. And so there's a lot of like Islamic art and kind of cross-cultural art in the area. So the kind of geometric pattern with the squares within the squares and the little triangles are trying to like represent what the Spanish, Moroccan, Islamic looking tiles of the area are.
Thank you to the Barnett family. Anyone else have anything to say?
This is beautiful.
It is beautiful.
Your work is meticulous.
It's very beautiful.
How long did it take you to put together the second thing? Not of your parents and your father, but the very large squares, or I should say the small squares. They're done so beautifully. When I was teaching, I did quilts with my students in 3rd grade, and they all reflected a different part of Great Neck. That was a social studies unit that we did. And I sewed the thing together, but not as neatly as you did. And it hung in the Great Neck Library for years. But I did a lot of quilting on my own, so I know how hard it is, and you put so much time and effort into it, and with meticulous, beautiful things as an outcome. An electric set I never heard of before. So,
yeah, it's relatively new. So the big quilt, each of the squares, so we had a workshop on distressing denim. We had a workshop on log cabin quilting, and then we had a workshop on the reverse applique technique. Each of those workshops were over 2 weeks. So it was like on a Tuesday. So there were 2 Tuesdays dedicated to each technique. In between, there were a couple of weeks where we did oral history interview and recording. So that could get put into the quilt. And at the end, the kind of joining of everything, that was done over several weeks. So I don't have pictures on me because I unfortunately wasn't available for that part of the process. But everyone who was participating in the program came together and they learned how to join it. There was this big stretcher, so everything was kind of even. And then this project, not only was it through Queen's Memory and Queen's Library, but there was an artist, her name is Naomi Kuo, and she is a social practice artist who was doing her MFA at Queen's College in the studio art department. And she was really running this project. It was her thought and her brainchild after having experienced the first iteration of these quilts. And so she brought the quilt back to her studio at Queen's College and continued to sew everything together. So that took a lot longer.
Okay. Marina, who are the 2 women in this picture?
That would be, so the taller woman in the picture, Natalie Milbrodt. So Queen's Memory Project is now an official program within the Queen's Library system. But it originally started as a thesis project for an MA in Library Sciences student at Queen's College, and her name was Natalie. And after she graduated, she started working at the Queen's Library and was able to instate her thesis project as an actual program. The other person in the picture, Lori Wallach, is the outreach coordinator at Queen's College. So she does some community liaison work. She works in the special archives at the Queen's College Rosenthal Library. So it's a very interdisciplinary, multiple hands in the pot organization, and I really enjoy working with them. And if you happen to be a Queen's College alum, if that's something happening here, you also can, there is a part of the COVID-19 project that they're opening up to alum of Queens College, or if you know anyone.
Thank you, Marie. Thank you. So wonderful, wonderful. And it maybe will even inspire us, and we'll ask you to be our consultant. We certainly have so many possibilities within our own community, if only we can so. And I'm sure lots of you can, not me. So that's why I'm calling on an expert. But I really mean it seriously. If we could get something started like that, that would be really art for us.
I mean, I also know some other projects. I know my grandma is aware of them too. There's a lot of other kind of interactive projects, community projects that I've been part of that that I can give you information of, or my grandma can give you information on, that doesn't necessarily require intense sewing. A lot of also the quilts, people used iron-on adhesive, so they didn't have to, sew super well, right? So there's ways to get around it.
Very nice.
Okay. This is wonderful. I mean, because you're going to see now all the possible views, the way one looks at your history, and we are going to have a rare treat, probably a first, a premiere, and maybe she'll go on to do all kinds of presentations after she's gotten her feet wet with us. But Marcia Schleppstein, who I think remarkably, I don't know why, is a celebrity. She is from a family, from a very famous family, I'm sure, to all of you. And so I would like to, I'm not going to even spoil the secret, although maybe I already have. What is her background, and how, and she's going to tell us about it. And I know we're all going to be interested. So could we go to Marsha? Marsha. Let's see, where is she? There she is. There she is. Great. All right, speak to us. You are we all?
Marsha, you need to you got it. Go for it.
I unmuted. Is it okay now?
Yes, now.
Nope, it's good.
Okay. All right, now.
So tell everybody who you are.
Okay. I'm just thinking now, this is a rough act to follow. I am a Margaretan from the Horowitz Margaretan family, and I'd like to share with you some genealogy that I have at my disposal. The Horowitz family can trace their roots back to 1440, and the Margaretans can trace roots back to the 1700s. The first intermarriage that I know of between Horowitz and Margaretan was when my great-grandmother, Julia Horowitz, married my great-grandfather, Rabbi Joel Margaretan. And the second was Regina Horowitz, who we'll go on to later, marrying Ignaz Margaretan. Now, Regina and Julia were first cousins, and Ignaz was Julia's first son. So if you could figure out the configuration there, I tried. Ignaz and my grandfather, Solomon, were brothers. So that's where that connection comes in. Regina's family and my grandfather and his three brothers emigrated to the United States around 1880. Regina's father, Jacob, his three sons, his son-in-law, Ignaz, his daughter, Regina, were founders of the Horowitz Margaretan Bakery. The bakery started on the Lower East Side, just doing matzah. And of course, they graduated to a whole load of different things. And then initially, I believe I was told that they were building something in the area, and the bakery had to be moved to Long Island City. But at that point, it was fully established. Jumping to 1955, my two uncles and three Horowitzes set out to do a genealogy. This is my grandfather and grandmother, and I'm going back and forth, but this is the book that was published and which is now in the New York Public Library. My uncles and the Horowitzes collected photographs and any general information that they could, and they made, to make it simple, they gave everybody a number. So my number is M12272, which means that I'm a Margaretan of a first child, of a second child, of a second child. My mother was the seventh child, and then I am the second child of that seventh child. So my number, M12272, is how I was put into this book. This book contains families by charts. Now, if you can see on top, I think it's backwards, but my chart is number 27. The Horowitz family, their charts are from 1 to 21. And the Margaretan family's charts are from 22 to 53. According to this book, the Horowitzes had 23 grandchildren. The Margaretans had 55. Very prolific family. So the chart starts off with my grandmother and grandfather, their children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. And then, let's see, these are pictures that people sent in, my cousins sent in of their family. This is my uncle, my cousins, my other uncle, cousins, my oldest uncle and his family. And let's see, this is taken at one of the meetings, and I am on the top, fourth person. No, excuse me, I'm on the other side. I'm on the left side, the third person in. So this book is 211 pages, and it contains dates of birth, marriage dates, where everyone lived, their occupation, their address of their occupation, who they're married to, when they got married, and when this book was published, if they died, they had, they had their death also. This book is falling apart, but this is this was done in 1955. I also have a directory from the 1920s. This is not as, there are no pictures in here, and it's not as concise, but it has names of the family, and I noticed my mother is here, but she was not married till 1932, so she's only here as Malvina Margaretan. The next book I have was written by my great-grandfather, Rabbi Joel Margaretan, and this is a history of the Margaretan family. And it was compiled by my uncle. Excuse me, somebody have a question? Oh, okay. My uncle, California, and an uncle translated by my uncle Dave, who was here in New York. I also have a recording of my grandmother with her 10 remaining children. She came here, my grandfather came here in the 1880s. She came here in the, I think, latter part of the 1880s, maybe a little bit later, with 5 children. And she had 13, she lost 3 in the influenza epidemic. So this recording that I have was her oldest son, my Uncle Isidore, who recorded her voice and his brothers and sisters when they were sitting Shiva for my grandfather. So I could play some of it because, thank you to Rona, I was given a portable phonograph, and it's where she was born in Hungary. They're from Hungarian descent. To me, it's a little interesting. You want me to play it a little bit?
Yeah, play 5. Yes, play a little bit.
Okay. Can you hear it?
Yeah.
I remember, well, I had from how long for the United States? 54 years. Do you remember when you came out? But I don't know the date. Who was with you? When we came out? Yeah. I think that was me. I mean, who came out with you? 5 children. You remember the children? Sure. And 4 boys and 1 girl. Julia.
Marsha, it's
Yeah.
it's very hard to hear them. So perhaps if
Oh, okay.
if we have a group who want to when this is over come and hear it, that's a one thing. So, but it's very
Yes.
hard.
So it talks about her coming here to the United States with 5 of her children. And then it goes on to talk about her life in Hungary, and that when she married my grandfather, she married him in September, and she was 15 in March. So he was 8 years older than her. And she had 13 children and 5 miscarriages. Her, going backwards, my great-grandfather, Rabbi Joel Margaretin, he and his wife, Julia, which I had mentioned before, stayed in Hungary and sent their 4 sons here to the United States. 1 son settled in California, 1 son settled in New Jersey, and then my grandfather and his brother settled in New York. And of course, my grandfather worked in the factory and bakery, I should say, and my uncle Ignatz was part of the founder. So my great-grandfather, Rabbi Joel, stayed in Hungary, and he lost his wife very early, Julia, and then married his previous girlfriend's daughter and proceeded to have 12 children with her. Many of those, I think all those children perished in the Holocaust. The family, our immediate family was here for a long, long time. And as I said, we were very lucky about the Holocaust. My recollections of the bakery were, we used to go sometime on a Sunday to pack up. We used to bring clothing, and then there were other bits of clothing and food that was packed up to go to relatives in Hungary. The bakery was also instrumental in bringing across and sponsoring many, many relatives from Hungary. I don't know, I mean, and I also saved 2 cans from its white pepper, kosher Passover, the Horowitz Margaretin logo, and then it says distributed by Horowitz Brothers and Margaretin. And the Margaretin is my great uncle Ignatz. So that's as far as, I could go on and on and on, but that's my story. Are there any questions? I don't know.
Let me ask you, what, from the very beginning, was it always a commercial bakery? I mean, they always, in the sense that always had ideas of a large scale company, just not a neighborhood store is what
I would assume so. I mean, the brother that was, because I'm assuming so, only because the initial bakery was Regina's 3 brothers, her father, her husband, and herself.
Also, a lot of people.
So to be able to have each of those families, have money with getting money out of the bakery, I would think they had to think way, way beyond matzah to have the bakery succeed.
We have a question.
Okay.
Yeah.
The Nemirovs,
I have
Carol,
a question.
I grew up many happy years engrossing is with Elaine Margaret. Whatever happened to her?
I don't know. In fact, my uncle Elias lived on Warwick Road in Great Neck.
Yeah.
So I don't even know where Warwick Road is.
No, the family went away every year for Passover, and the entire Margaret, or a lot of Margaretins,
Took a
would take
floor.
out an entire floor and be there for Passover. I guess they closed the factory at that point.
Right. They also, Regina, I was told, also bought her children houses in Hunter Mountain, and they named the enclave Margaretin Park. So they were very, very wealthy people. I mean, the bakery did well.
but are you in touch with a large number of your relatives?
Not really. I used to be. We used to have meetings, I think, once a year. And then sort of like everything else, when the older people die, it just dissipates. And the younger people just, I don't know, we just didn't bother. And my children are not that interested. The family is huge. And we just, I don't know, just drifted apart.
So you don't anticipate another family tree coming out of the...
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I have an extension of this book, but nothing like this book. I mean, it just has names in it, and they were always, and the second book, I was told also, because there were some intermarriages, they didn't want the person in there who is not Jewish, and it was a whole stupid thing. So the first book that was compiled in 1955 is amazing, and maybe when we all get together to share a book, I could bring it and everybody can look at it and see what's, what I've left out.
Oh, I was just going to ask you, are there any secrets that you want to reveal? Like,
Not that I know. Not that I know of. I wasn't privy to those secrets.
thank you so much. So we were looking at family histories from two very different points, and I was just thinking, I did send maybe that we would do one more, and I could ask you, please, if you have any heirlooms that such special stories from your family that are maybe something is particularly Hungarian or particularly Polish, or customs from the area where your families are, or a family. Anybody else have a family history, or anyone has anything like from 23andMe or Ancestry.com. Is anyone interested now in looking back? Because I know or have children who are. So actually next week, I'm hoping we can have a legacy session with what our children are doing now and what they know about their families. So if anybody has children, grandchildren, I would want to say, not that we haven't already had it. We've had the Adler family has a beautiful, and I brought it also. They have a beautiful ketubah from nachis from their family, as well as this magnificent Haggadah that I'm going to have in the library. I'm sorry that it's backwards. That was put together by Rochelle Adler. I'm saying it that way because this is a legacy, and I'm hoping, and I think Nellie has family that she would love to highlight, as well as Natalie. I don't know if Natalie Dean is here, and we would like to hear from the next generation, as well as anyone who has something they'd like to tell us about their family. I sent out, I don't know if you've looked at it yet, but I sent out a family tree that my father-in-law put together for my daughter Paula, who had it as a Hebrew school assignment to do a family tree. So she went back, and I know I think it might have even piqued her to start interest in her family. I would like to hear from people. Is the next generation interested in their past? So,
Not really.
Not right this minute, unless you had a story to tell. But I was hoping next week that we could hear from your progeny and or about your progeny and what they're doing, and to make you proud. I know they're all just existing makes everyone proud. However, if they have something to share, I would be so happy to have it aired. If you could let me know ahead of time, so that we could let everyone know that they're going to either be here or you're going to talk about that. And so I'm hoping to have a Zoom meeting with my daughter. It would be nice to see her once in a while. So a Zoom meeting with her about she has moved. She is an academic, and therefore has moved many times. She is definitely a wandering Jew. And she has taken this family. It's large. I hope you see it online. I did send it out. Just as she was having this project, my father-in-law became interested in calligraphy. And so you'll see what two generations of Lupkins can do. And I want to just say she has been maybe in 6 different homes to this point, and she has taken this very large family tree that will be framed, and it has gone with her everywhere she's gone. And not only that, for every holiday, I'm just floored that because for every birthday, every anniversary, she has pictures that I didn't even know that she had collected. I mean, pictures from the past. So I just want to know what's going on in your families. And so please collect candlesticks from your grandmother or your grandfather. And when I see that Marsha has information from her family from the 14th century. I said, well, where we have holes even in two generations back. And I would like to feel that in the future that we would add on instead of not having anybody interested in it anymore. So have a very good week and stay safe and stay well and communicate with me if you would.
Thank you very much, Rona.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Hello and everyone.